All right, yes, perfect. So, how do we go about the flow trading plan on Forex? Of course, we mainly mentioned indices, but you can also focus on Forex. Now, for Forex, it is very important to understand that we first off want to trade the most volatile pairs in specific sessions. That is the main importance. Now, for your Forex flow trading plan, I would always advise to stick to the top three, which is Australian dollar, US dollar, EU, and GU. And if you want to trade those pairs right there, because they are quite volatile, then you want to focus on the London kill zone and the New York kill zone. And when I say that, I mean that you focus on one. Because a flow trading plan requires quite a lot of focus, quite a lot of attention as well. So for you to go into a flow trading plan and focus on the 1 minute entries, for example, 6 hours a day, which is both London and New York, that is quite a lot. That is quite demanding for your brain as well. I would not advise that because then you lose focus and it's not advised. But stick to whichever one you like to trade more and whichever, of course, is your personal preference as well. So if London suits you better, perfect. A flow trading plan for London can be used on Australian dollar, US dollar, EU, and GU. A flow trading plan for New York as well can be used on AU, EU, and GU right there. So for London and New York, London again being from 2 to 5 a.m. New York local time, and New York session 7 to 10 a.m. New York local time. Those are your kill zones that you want to mainly focus on. With that being said as well, where in the indices, which in the enrollment we went over, in the indices, you don't necessarily need that news event. As in, yes, it's great, but the equities open already has so much volatility coming in. So there's so much volatility coming in at a specific time of day, where Forex, that's just less. As in the kill zones, yes, they are extremely volatile compared to, for example, the Asia range, etc. But it's not as volatile, not nearly as volatile as your overall, as your equities open. So what do we want to do in that case? We do always want to focus on news events as well. Do we have a news event supporting that day? Because when we have news on that particular day, again, just simply the higher time frame time video, when we have that news supporting the idea of trading that day, we know that day is already going to be more volatile. It's already higher probability. It's already more of a guarantee to happen. So when we do have that, we can just simply look to trade London or New York. So if you want to trade the flow trading plan on Forex, I would always advise go for London or New York. Then if we first look at Australian dollar, US dollar, the thought process, etc. is just the same. So I'll show you some more examples, but the thought process is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is, again, the time factor. So here on Australian dollar, if we first off mark out all the higher time frame PD rays, and I'm going to do it on the daily currently because the weekly, etc. doesn't really have any extra high time PD rays, same for the monthly. So on the daily, what we are seeing is we don't have a daily fair value gap in this leg higher right there. So the next daily fair value gap is sitting right there with as well these highs that would then be a valid order block as well. So those are the next higher time frame PD rays. All right, how can we trade towards those right there? Well, if we go into the 4 hour, we have a few 4 hour fair value gaps lower as well. I mainly want to focus on that 3rd of January, which is this day right here. This is where, around that time, is where New York session ends, and this is where the London session begins around that time. That is our focus area right there, that specific time window. Then on the 1 hour, let's see, what do we have? Let's refine the actual times. It is that time and that time right there. So those are our times where we want to look to get involved. Now, how do we do that? That's the exact same thing as a normal flow trading plan. So either you're going to be trading New York or London. That is already predetermined. So you already know which session you are going to trade. Again, I would always advise stick to one session, especially flow trading plan, because it's quite demanding for your focus and for your attention. So here, what do we see? Well, in London, we still have this target, right? We still just simply have that higher target discount rate, that target. All right, on the 1 hour, what are we seeing? We have this 1 hour value gap higher right there, created in Asia. Eventually, we fail to create that new fair value gap higher right there, indicating that we might be bearish. Now, at that moment in time, of course, we still don't really have any bearish arguments. As in, yes, we have a small bearish argument in the form we are not creating a new bullish value of that. But once we then have this move lower, perfect, we create that unusual context. We now find our usual context on the 15 minute, for example, sitting right there. In itself, that could already be an entry, in my opinion, just purely based on a flow trading plan. But what we can do is go into the 5 minute, go into the 1 minute right there, to then look for example our 1 minute ST sitting right there, covering the highs, and then targeting our simple 1 to 2. And that is exactly how you would go about a flow trading plan on Forex right there. This is one example. And we have two more examples because we are going to go over GU and EU as well. So let's take a look. Where on EU, we want to focus on the same exact day. It's quite similar example actually. And it is also in the form of daily fair value gaps, where we have this daily fair value gap sitting right there. That daily fair value gap is where we are not respecting it. So what is the next PD rate here that we can reach for? Well, we have this fair value gap and we also have these highs right there. The fair value gap is a little bit higher, so I'm going to mark out that daily fair value gap sitting right there. So that is the next higher time frame discount rate that we can look to potentially target. Again, do we have the lower time frame agreeing to potentially target that discount rate? Let's see. Well, here on the 1 hour, we have 1 hour continuation lower into 1 hour fair value gap, and we have a few sweeps right there, and eventually we continue lower. This is more clearly visible on the 15 minute right there, where eventually we have a move into the 15 minute fair value gap, and we continue lower off of that. Now, this is quite interesting because right there, we have no news supporting the idea of trading that day. Again, I want you to focus on the days where we do have US dollar news mainly supporting the idea of trading that particular day, because those will be the most volatile days as a general rule of thumb. So that is very important to understand as well. Where what we do see is on the 3rd of January, this is where it gets interesting, because I've also seen some questions where what if we take that target right there, then what do we do after? Well, afterwards, we just continue, as in we just see, all right, what would then be the next discount rate? Well, here we have a few order blocks right there, but we've also reached them already at that time. Do we have something on the weekly? Not necessarily. We don't have anything on the weekly. Could be, for example, the daily fair value gap sitting right there that we could aim for before we actually created, of course, this swing low, which would then be the aim. Now, before we do that, we have this Wednesday, 3rd of January, where we also have news supporting the idea again of trading. So then if we go into the 1 hour again, it's the same exact thought process. We just follow whatever the lower time frame is telling us. If the lower time frame is telling us that we're still bearish, again, then we just target lower discount rates. So here, for example, all right, we don't really have any reason to go higher. We are not respecting this 1 hour fair value gap sitting right there. So here, what is the closest premium rate heading into that London? It's this swing high sitting right there, which we sweep right there during the London Open as well, eventually continue lower, eventually creating these boundaries even to go into the lower time frame. On the 15 minute as well, right there, we can look for a potential boundary, which at that moment in time, I do not think we get right there. But the 1 hour swing high in itself is already a premium rate. So at that moment in time, of course, in hindsight it's easy to say, but this is also where the practicing comes in, where we truly need to be more reactive, in a more reactive state. Because when you see that swing high getting swept at that moment in time, at first you might not think it's a sweep. You might think we are continuing higher, not sure where we're going, etc. But then all of a sudden we have a drop right there. That in itself, 1 hour PD rate, 5 minute ST, could already be an entry sitting right there. And then anticipating lower price, because we are reacting towards whatever price action is telling us right there. And this is why it's so important as well to limit our hours that we are trading in that particular day. Because if we are prepared for a 6 hour trading day, that is too much, that's too long. And we are constantly focusing and trying to react to price action. after 5 hours of trading, you are going to be absolutely destroyed. You are going to be tired. You are going to, there's all sorts of things going through your mind, right? After staring to the chart for 5 hours, for 6 hours, it's way too long. So here, we've been staring at the chart for maybe around 2 hours. We didn't see anything really interesting, so we might do something else besides that as well. We set some alerts potentially, but afterwards, after an hour or so, we do see potentially something interesting. So in our session, there's something interesting happening. So we can still take into account that we would likely still have the focus right there to react to that specific thing, which was actually quite nice right there. So that is another example where if we go over GU, and we go over, let's see, 14th of December, I have written down, which was also a news day. Because again, we want those news days to agree with us, because that is where the volatility mainly will be. Then on the 14th of December is where we have this price action, heading into the 14th of December. We have this price action. We are just coming off of a daily order block right there. We don't really have any premium rate in this whole leg lower. The next premium rate that we have is actually the new highs right there. That first swing high. On the weekly, we are coming off of a weekly Friday gap as well, coming off a previous week low. So I would argue that the odds here to continue higher, just purely based on this, are pretty high, right? Are higher than actually continuing lower, especially when we see a move like this after sweeping those lows as well. So what can it aim for? Next premium rate in the form of that swing high right there. No Friday gaps in the leg lower. Perfect. So how are we delivering towards those premium rates? This is exactly where the same thing, London and New York, comes in right there. London already doing its thing, having a few sweeps right there, trying to find our context, on the 15 minutes, for example, where we have a few fair value gaps right there in the leg higher, continuing higher off of that. And feel free to take this example right here in GU and dissect it yourself. Try to make a case study around it. See what is happening. Now, also what you see, what is happening is that London, in a flow trading plan especially, often here creates the high or low of the day. Now, for a flow trading plan, that is a little bit more important. It's as well not super important to understand, but it is important to understand if London already moves towards that high time for PD rate. For example, here, London already moved towards that high time for PD rate. Then here in New York, you can, if you are going to focus on New York, you can look to catch those usual context areas, just your fair value gap higher, to try to catch that to eventually continue higher off of that, which on the 1 hour as well is potentially a 1 hour fair value gap to continue higher off of that. So that is what your main focus would be if you are trying to trade a flow trading plan for Forex. This is how you would go about it. Again, price wise and just technical wise, nothing really changes. The only thing that changes is, again, the time aspect, where you need to pay attention to news and those kill zones. That is the only thing that changes. Other than that, it is really almost the same. So hopefully that makes sense. It makes a bit more sense as well. And if it doesn't make sense, of course, feel free to let me know. Perfect. Thank you.